Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alex Mozed, founder and CEO of Applico, co-author of Modern Monopolies. And we're on Winner Take All, where we talk about all things tech monopolies, tech regulation, all things tech. And today we're going to talk about Prime Day. So this is now basically Amazon's version of basically their own Black Friday or their own Cyber Monday. I'm also joined by Nick Johnson, co-author of Modern Monopolies with me. And what is this modeled after?
Prime Day is modeled after what they call Singles Day in China. Alibaba basically created a fake holiday marketing to single people in China to go get a bunch of discounts on all of their two marketplaces, Taobao and Tmall, and it's become like the single largest shopping day on the planet at this point. It's pretty crazy. You're talking like $12 billion, I think, in a single day last time.
So so basically this is kind of a copycat of a move from the Chinese e-commerce platforms. I was looking up some data. So they expect for Prime Day today in 2019 to be between 5.8 billion and 6.15 billion in total sales for today. And I mean, that's pretty remarkable. That's just on Amazon. Now, Walmart and others have also copied and tried to have their own version of this.
I've done my part to contribute to that.
Yes, and I'm about to do my part as well. I actually think it technically might run through tomorrow, but
yeah, it's 15th and the 16th.
Then I was comparing this. Okay, I mean, let's look at Black Friday, which is all retail, which is all of the retailers doing discounts. In 2018, a record $6.22 billion in online sales for this now. So these are all the retailers on Black Friday. And then Cyber Monday was $7.8 billion. I don't know. The numbers kind of seem weird, but the point is Amazon itself is basically matching either Black Friday or Cyber Monday. I don't know why they're saying Black Friday is also online sales. It seems like kind of a weird way to report it. But either way, Amazon is basically its own conglomerate version of all of the retailers combined. And then they just made their own day on July 15th today. It's pretty impressive. And then the other thing that is interesting on this note is that 2 days ago, now there's a report that Barneys is exploring a possible bankruptcy because rent is being jacked up so high on their flagship retail store. This was actually what we were talking about, I think, on episode 1. Where we were saying how a lot of these retailers should have actually gone bankrupt a long time ago, but because debt and the interest rates are so low and debt is so cheap, we think that it's actually propping up a lot of industries that should have had a lot of this kind of dead weight cleared out a long time ago, retail being one of them. Barneys is who would have thought Barneys actually, of all the retailers, like I would have thought many other kind of lower end retailers, but this is kind of a shock to me.
Yeah, retail is a tough business, and Barneys is a company that I don't think is really capitalized on e-commerce the way a lot of others have, and partly because they have a very big in-store presence. I think you've seen a company, I think it's called Harrods in the UK. They have their own big kind of store there. As kind of the UK London equivalent, and it's a challenge for these companies to compete in an online world. Why go to the store? I can get it delivered in 2 hours if I really need it.
Yep. And they're saying, well, our rent went from like 16 million to 30 million. I mean, but you would have seen that coming. To me, it just going up $15 more million in rent.
It's a pretty thin margin.
It doesn't drive you into bankruptcy, right? There's other stuff falling down and causing big issues for this company. They have, dozens of stores. So this isn't just this one thing that jacked up their rent. Oh, now we have to go bankrupt. No, this is a systemic problem throughout all of retail. And Barneys or just this flagship store, I think that's a red herring that they're trying to just cast blame on this. The bigger problem is Amazon, marketplace business models, and retail just not being able to go into e-com and figuring out that e-com just isn't enough. So the other thing is, sticking on the Amazon trend, we also have some interesting data here about Amazon is now the new king of shipping, is the title of this article, and how over 40% of the shipments that Amazon's processing, right? I buy a product on Amazon and now I need that product fulfilled. You can see here the graph of the United States Postal Service declining, UPS slightly declining, but kind of staying flat. And basically, the Amazon shipments now accounting for the majority. It's bigger than any other shipper that Amazon is using. That they are fulfilling themselves.
It's pretty remarkable. If you look at the graph, it goes, from down here to up here in pretty short order. And if you talk to a lot of people in the shipping industry, they weren't too worried about Amazon 5 years ago. Thought, oh, they can never do what we do. And now you have, what was it, FedEx, who dumped Amazon because they're not making a significant portion of the shipments anymore, and it didn't make sense for them to do the business. Now Amazon is its own number one shipper. They've already got their own delivery platforms where you've got third parties that they're bringing in to deliver to customers, and it seems like it's only a matter of time before all that continues to get opened up the same way they have with AWS.
Honestly, UPS should dump Amazon too, even though, FedEx basically had a marginal share of Amazon shipping business as 1.6%, and that would pretty much stay the same. UPS is about 16.5% of Amazon shipping universe. But I don't know when UPS and FedEx and these guys are going to wake up and say, man, Amazon's actually a direct competitor to my business. And they've already said that they're going to open up basically Amazon shipping as a service, fulfillment as a service.
Right.
If I'm UPS, ditch them. Right? You need to create, Amazon is absolutely your competitor, direct competitor. There's no one else out there that's been able to build basically not just a national, but probably, now global logistics network. And they did it on the heels of the marketplace. And no one else is able to have that scale. Walmart would be the other one that could potentially try to do it, but, they're much farther behind. And, they're going to absolutely have much more competition from Amazon. I would absolutely try to ditch this and create a separate competitive service for other marketplaces, for other e-commerce providers, because shipping is like the killer app for marketplaces, right? I want 2-day free shipping. If you're an e-commerce player or you're a competitive marketplace, even if you're not Walmart, right? Who are all the specialized marketplaces out there? Like Farfetch, like Goat and StockX, Etsy, eBay. What are those guys doing? Right? eBay's fulfillment is not good. I think they're trying to figure this out. But why can't UPS work with these other serious competitors to an Amazon on the e-commerce side and say, we're also going to let eBay have fulfilled by UPS in 2 days?
Yeah, I think the challenge in retail in particular is that Amazon has such a head start. It's hard to go head to head. But something like B2B might be a little more interesting for them. You can say, this is where retail was 10, 15 years ago. Amazon is just getting into this industry in the last few years. We actually have an opportunity to go in and help create some of these B2B marketplaces and things that are going to compete with Amazon business.
Yeah, B2B is much easier to start, but these guys can't. The retailers could justify, obviously it's expensive, and Amazon's definitely subsidizing the cost of these shipments, right? I ship something for $5. Amazon's Prime is at $120 a year. So they have that membership revenue to try to offset some of the subsidies, but Amazon's definitely subsidizing this 2-day shipping, now 1-day shipping on at least a few million items that they're doing. So the other retailers, the other e-commerce players, the eBays of the world, I don't think that they can subsidize it to the degree that Amazon is doing, but they could certainly layer in some subsidies if you started to have some of this centralized fulfillment. And I think that's the key thing, what Walmart, what we were just talking about on episode 2, was about how Walmart's losing over $1 billion a year in e-commerce. The reason why they're losing that is because of the investments in the infrastructure to basically facilitate fast shipping and fulfillment. And so, if anyone has the infrastructure, it's a UPS, it's a FedEx. And how can you now be an alternative? So as a third-party seller, I'm not stock holding my inventory in an Amazon warehouse, or maybe I'm doing half in an Amazon warehouse and I'm doing half in a UPS or a FedEx warehouse. and now I'm fulfilling on Amazon, or I'm fulfilling on Etsy or eBay or StockX or Goat or Farfetch, or I mean these different, or Walmart. But someone's got to figure this out. Hopefully UPS or FedEx, but I don't know. I haven't seen anything that promising from them. We'll see. Looking at the index, so the markets have continued to chug along today pretty nicely. The Platt index is up 54 basis points today. The IYW index, 27 basis points. The QQQ, 27 basis points. Why is Platt up double today? I mean, I think Facebook got a big boost when they paid off $5 billion to the government to settle that. I mean, there's really no privacy concerns. Are there privacy concerns about Facebook anymore? They just made a $5 billion payment. Is the government still going to go after Facebook for privacy? I think that pretty much kills it, right?
Well, it certainly gives them cover, at least for the time being, to not have to worry about it. We just paid this big fine. I'm sure they made some concessions in there about their activity and what they're going to do going forward. And as long as they play within the confines of that, it's hard to see them getting dunked on too hard in the future.
Yeah, you would think so. So last thing here, let's go back to Amazon one more time. When we look at Amazon multiples, right? So Amazon multiples are based off of revenue. And Amazon, Jeff Bezos, in April of this year, in his annual shareholder letter for looking at the 2018 year, finally, actually for the first time ever, announced that they had $277 billion in GMV. Amazon has only reported revenue, okay, of $136 billion in total revenue. So what that's saying is, on the now 56% of sales on Amazon.com, or 56% of the sales on Amazon.com are from a third-party seller.
I think it was 58.
58%?
Yeah.
That doesn't get logged as revenue, right? That's why you have this discrepancy.
There's gross sales, or GMV, and then there's net revenue, which is basically what the marketplace keeps from that.
Yes. Now, when you add up all of Amazon's net revenue, not GMV, net revenue, excluding AWS, right? You're at about $123 billion in revenue. Yet that $123 billion represents $277 billion of throughput, $277 billion of stuff purchased on Amazon, either in the US or globally, right? And then you add in $12 billion in revenue on top of that from AWS. Now, let's look at some of the multiples here. Amazon's multiples are about a 4.08 if we look at the price to revenue for the past 4 quarters. You're basically at 4x, right? What that means is the share price of Amazon relative to their revenue. So they basically have a 4x revenue multiple, okay? Now, when we look at their EV to revenue, it's about 4.25, 4.24. So that's saying enterprise value. So that's market cap plus their debt minus cash. It's the enterprise value over revenue, 4.24 multiple, right? You see other multiples on here.
So where's Walmart?
Now, Walmart does about $500 billion in revenue. Walmart, when we were talking about last episode, probably is thrown on, I don't know, maybe another $20 billion in GMV that's not reported in that. That's probably generous. I don't know. Maybe it's 15 billion. We're not really sure. They don't disclose it. But let's say Walmart's 510, 520, somewhere in there. It's not really going to move the needle when you look at these. Price to revenue multiple is 0.65. Right? So that's a 0.65 basically revenue multiple on that 500 billion. 500 billion is what they're measuring that off of. The GMV is not reported. EV to revenue is 0.78. Okay. So let's just do some simple arithmetic here. And you've got, I don't know, between a 6 or 7x delta between the multiples for an Amazon versus the multiples for a Walmart. here is what these multiples are missing. If you do the numbers on what the price to really GMV plus AWS revenue is, which puts you all in at about $290 billion, right? You're basically cutting these multiples by more than half. Okay, so that means that the Amazon price to revenue multiple is now probably under 2x. The EV to revenue multiples also probably under 2x. I mean, that substantially changes the way that you think and look at that business, because when you compare that to a Walmart, you say, wow, it's a 6 to 7x difference between how these companies are valued from a multiple standpoint. But then if you say, okay, these multiples are now sub 2x for Amazon when you factor in this GMV, and then you do the comparison, now they're much closer. Now they're maybe 3.5 times, which is a substantial difference than 6 to 7 times the multiple that Amazon is earning on its throughput, on its revenue versus what Walmart's doing.
So if you're Walmart, what do you do?
If you're Walmart, what you try to do is the question is, why does Amazon earn such a higher multiple? And the reason why it earns such a higher multiple is because Wall Street sees the growth. They give some appreciation to the platform business model, to the network effects, to the millions of third-party sellers, to the margins that Amazon is earning. So it's not that that all of this is completely remiss and not captured by Wall Street. But if you're Walmart, what you need to do is start to show the growth in a marketplace dynamic. And that really is the driver for Amazon, is that they can show this They had never reported the GMV numbers until about 3 months ago, by the way. But Wall Street knew and understood the business model to a certain extent. What Walmart needs to do is eventually be able to start disclosing what is the GMV on the Walmart.com, on the Jet.com. What is the total throughput of Walmart? Because now revenue is not actually correctly capturing it anymore, as we're seeing with Amazon. What else would you say they should do?
Well, it seems like that more asset light marketplace model is a key factor in both Amazon's growth as well as how it's been evaluated. I think that, what was the number? I think it was a Bloomberg report late last year, basically saying that Amazon's margins on sales, marketplace sales, which they call 3P versus 1P, which is basically their own reseller business. Marketplace sales have double the margin. So if you talk about not only where the sales are coming from, it's now majority marketplace sales, even more of the margin from that retail business starts to look like where that's coming from, where the profit is coming from in that retail business isn't the linear side. Really starts to me to look like the linear side is more of a market making activity. You're trying to get into new markets, things like beauty, which we talked about last week. And then you really scale it up, you build out this marketplace. And then if you're able to do that successfully, that's where you start to make a lot of the profit.
And that's where you see also where Amazon's really reinvesting for growth. Same way that Walmart is investing in infrastructure in the US for e-com. Their international P&L, they're losing over $1 billion a year internationally. Why? Because of all the same reasons that Walmart is losing $1 billion in the US. They're investing in those vertical specific items, getting inventory, in key areas for the product catalog. Certainly infrastructure expense in this. And, I think that's the kind of mindset that hopefully Doug and the team at Walmart will continue to have and not be too deterred by any flack. I mean, these guys are smart guys. They're very experienced. They've definitely been under a lot of pressure in their career and understand how to handle it. So I'm not too concerned about them. But yeah, I think they're on the right track, even though Amazon is just such a beast. And, I would also say from the analysis of an Amazon, I don't think investors are properly factoring in and looking at these ratios with the GMV data. I don't think the GMV data and the concept of the amount of throughput is actually correctly priced into these multiples, in the sense that they could probably be higher, or these multiples are technically suppressed. If you try to compare apples to apples, compare Walmart's multiples to an Amazon's multiples, in the sense that if you're actually looking at the same thing, the reason that for years investors have looked at revenue is because they're trying to understand how much throughput does this company have.
Right. They're comparing it to Walmart, and that's the metric that is the same. Also, Amazon just hasn't told people GMV until now.
Exactly. And so GMV is really a relatively new concept for these e-commerce, but not for just e-commerce, for really many marketplaces. That could be an Uber and a Lyft. That could be payment platforms like MasterCard, Amex, Visa, the NASDAQ, the ICE, the New York Stock Exchange, any of these, even the App Store for iOS, the Salesforce App Store. All of these things have a notion of throughput, which is not actually being factored in, and it actually isn't even in a lot of the Bloomberg data. Okay. Seacrest out?
Seacrest out.
Okay.